The post-debate fallout continues for former President Donald Trump, who could be losing his edge against Vice President Kamala Harris. But how much does this one debate really matter for the election? And could another debate be just as impactful? To break this all down, we're joined now by The Hill's White House reporter Alex Gangitano. Alex, even though Trump immediately said after the debate that he won, many lawmakers disagree. In fact, Senate Republicans are upset and disappointed by the former president's performance. So what are they the most upset about?
Yeah, a lot of these lawmakers, their initial takeaway was that Trump just got baited by Harris. He said things that they didn't want him to say. He got off message. He showed that he was angry. They wanted him to stay on the message, which was, the economy will be better off under a Trump administration, or crime will go down, immigration numbers will go down, things that are part of this Republican platform. Instead, Harris, got him to say, repeat an online conspiracy theory about Haitian migrants taking pets from Ohio residents that has been debunked time and time again. She baited him into talking about abortion politics more than I think Republican lawmakers wanted him to. So a lot of the frustration was just that basically he got off message, and they think that they do have a strong argument going into this election, but that he wasn't able to repeat those arguments.
Well, Republican pollster Frank Lunsford predicts that Trump will lose the election due to his debate performance. Why does he think rather that this one debate could be that impactful?
Yeah, I think what's so unique about this debate is the fact that this election is so unique that, of course, Biden and Trump's debate in June was so impactful enough that it ultimately led to the president dropping out of the race. But that led to the fact that we now have somebody running for president. That polling has showed that a very small minority of voters really know her on a level that they feel like they know Trump. And so they went into this debate. Voters wanted to see what Harris's priorities are. What is she like on camera for an hour and a half? What can she show off when she's in this back and forth, or with moderators or with Trump? And so they wanted to see what she was like. Whereas Trump is, one of the most well-known people on the planet at this point. So was President Biden when he was running. And so if he wasn't, didn't give his strongest debate performance, people got to see more of Harris. And I do think this debate is that impactful because she had a pretty sharp delivery, pretty good performance. And so if you were on the fence of, am I going to give Trump another shot or not, you might now be thinking, well, I got to know her well enough. I know that she's smart, so I'll take the plunge. But of course, it's going to take time for us to see if that polling actually shows that that's the way people are thinking.
Well, so given how this went, what are the chances that Trump accepts a second debate challenge? And what type of pressure do you think he's facing from inside the party to do another debate or to not do another debate, given that many Republicans weren't happy with how he did?
Yeah, so right now, Trump has been back and forth on his thinking over if he would do one. Of course, he came out of the ABC debate saying that he won the debate and criticizing heavily ABC, saying that the moderators weren't fair to him. And so those kinds of indications maybe tell us that he wouldn't want to do a second debate, but that could change any day on what his thinking is on it. But when we've been talking to Republicans over if they think he should do a second debate, a lot of them have encouraged him to do so because they think that he can stay on message and if given another shot, that they want him to talk about things like the economy and talk about immigration and talk about, Vice President Harris changing her opinion on hot button issues like fracking. And so if you give him another chance, they think that he cannot get, as distracted as he did last time. And they're confident he could stay on message a second time.
Well, the Harris campaign posted almost the entire debate on X, calling it a new ad, obviously as a joke. What do you think of that move?
Yeah, they're definitely proud of the debate performance. They think that the entire nearly 2 hours is all good for Harris. I do think it's a move that's just projecting confidence here. They know that people aren't going to sit there and watch this entire debate again. And of course, now in the age of social media, you can go listen back to whatever clip you want, and especially these big moments. But I think they're just trying to send a message of we did we feel that good about how she did and what the fallout has been. So they're kind of poking at Trump. And so much of this debate was also poking at Trump and baiting him. And so they're going to continue poking at him and baiting him, trying to get him to be angry with her or say something that maybe Republicans don't want him to say because they are criticizing him and bashing him.
That is definitely a good point that you said in the beginning, that no one's going to go back and watch that 2-hour debate. I haven't heard that yet, but that's a good point.
Who knows? Maybe there's people out there that would.
Maybe like political nerds like us, but not the average
Right.
person. They clearly feel, though, that they won. But the post-debate polls aren't drastically different. At least they aren't yet. So where do you think the Democrats go from here after this initial sugar high post-debate?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. It's a sugar high. Well, we'll see in the long term if people come November, they're at the ballot box and they think to themselves, there was one debate. If there ends up only being one debate, let me go off of how she did on that and make my decision that way. But the initial, I think, is so much of a sugar high that Democrats felt really, really good at the end of the night on Tuesday. But they also had to come back to earth a little bit. We've been talking to Democrats who have said, I was so excited she did so well, but I have to remind myself that there's still several weeks until Election Day. This is still a tied race. They went into this race neck and neck, and Harris really is still an underdog. And we've seen the Harris campaign continuously say that she's the underdog in this race. Democrats have also continued with that narrative just to try to, set the bar at a certain point that they have experienced so much momentum behind them. Democrats have been so excited. But when it comes down to these swing state voters, moderate voters in these essential battleground states, how they vote is what's really important. And so as much as Democrats, in DC, especially up on Capitol Hill, are excited about Harris and her performance, they still have so much ground to make up in those states where they're largely tied with Trump. And going into Election Day, unless they have moved the needle significantly, it's still going to be an extremely close race.
And just to go back to Trump for a second, RFK Jr., who has, of course, endorsed Trump and is still on the ballot in nearly 24 states, is also weighing in on the debate. What are his thoughts on how it went, and what is he saying now?
Yeah, so one of his thoughts was that Trump might have lost some independent voters with his performance. And he said that Trump was pretty distracted. What he said was largely aligned with what we've heard from Republican lawmakers, which is that Trump went off message. But RFK Jr. saying that independent voters were a loss here is a big deal for the Trump campaign, because those are the exact kind of voters that they're trying to appeal to, that they have to appeal to, I should say. These voters in the battleground states are the essential voting bloc that they need to appeal to, that, Trump's base is going to stick with him no matter what they say, what he says. And the Democrats who are really excited about Harris's candidacy are going to stick with her no matter what. But when it comes down to voters in Wisconsin, North Carolina, Georgia, Nevada, Arizona, those are the places that are going to decide this election. So appealing to independent, moderate, suburban voters, those are the folks that are going to decide this. And so losing voters like that in this election is because of the debate, is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and another major headline from Tuesday night was Taylor Swift's endorsement of Harris. That drove lots of traffic, 337,000 people, in fact, to vote.gov. She also made some comments last night at the VMAs. What else did she have to say in her acceptance speech? Yeah,
so she interestingly didn't bring up Harris or say her name. It wasn't an extension of an endorsement, but it was an extension of signing up to vote. She basically said, if you're over 18, please register to vote. It's this important thing is coming up. It's the 2024 presidential election. I do think that even that is somewhat of an endorsement for Harris, considering she already endorsed Harris. But the consequences of this endorsement are basically, when I've been talking to people over how much this means, because a lot of people look at it as, well, maybe a Taylor Swift diehard fan was already going to vote for Harris. But if there's a person in Ohio that maybe wasn't going to register to vote, but loves Taylor Swift and listens to her and is influenced by her and goes and registers to vote and then votes for Vice President Harris, that could move the needle in some way. And so I think Taylor Swift focusing on these registrations and getting young people to participate in this election, that's really actually pretty good news for the Harris campaign.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see in the end if there's ever a way to measure the impact of that versus any other celebrity endorsement. But moving on, there is some new polling on Black voters in key battleground states. What does that data show?
Yeah, so these Black voters in the key battleground states, according to this polling, are highly motivated to cast their ballot in this year's election. Basically, this group of pollsters was actually Everytown for Gun Safety, which is a gun violence prevention advocacy group, but also some other groups that show that the majority of Black voters in places like Atlanta, Detroit, Milwaukee, Las Vegas, and Philadelphia are identifying as Democrats, and 74% say they're very motivated to vote in November. Those are stats that are showing that Harris is behind a lot of that motivation. We knew that when President Biden was at the top of the ticket, the enthusiasm about this election with, a repeat of 2020, that's what we always talked about, is that this was a repeat. People weren't enthusiastic about casting their ballots. And if you weren't, a diehard Trump or Biden fan, you were not thrilled about this. But now that we're seeing that 74% of Black Americans in these really essential states, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, that they're very motivated to vote, I think that is part of the Harris appeal. And it can definitely make a difference in some of these battleground states.
Yeah, definitely does feel like a pretty significant change so far. Now, back on the Hill, the list of House Republicans who say they know the only way to avoid a government shutdown is for a clean continuing resolution, or CR, to pass is growing. Can you explain where we're at with this and what the likelihood is of a shutdown looming?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about, okay, at this point, we need to go ahead and have a clean stopback or a stopgap, which basically means get the other, political legislation and proposals out of the bill and basically kick the can down until after Election Day. So if there were to be a government shutdown, it's at least after Election Day. So there's not the blame game going on. And I do think at this point, the blame would largely fall on Republicans if the government were to shut down. But something that's adding to all of this is that former President Trump is urging Republicans to vote against any short-term funding that doesn't include the insurances of election security, because they're trying to, him and some of his supporters in the House are trying to include a provision that basically looks at, migrants and people that aren't that have immigrated here voting in the elections. And it's really a messaging bill that they're trying to get the base to rally around. But I think Speaker Johnson at this point, after he scrapped those plans to vote on this conservative leaning funding bill, because it was clear it didn't have the votes to pass, they also need some Democrats to help them out to pass this. Now they're looking at a clean CR. I do think that is going to be eventually what they end up doing, because nobody wants a shutdown before Election Day, and the political implications of that would really be detrimental for them.
Yeah, for both sides, right? Now, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Kyiv this week announcing a new round of aid to Ukraine. What is the White House plan here, first of all? And also, what could the challenges to this be?
Yeah, so basically, Secretary of State Blinken announced that the United States, along with Britain, are going to give another $1.5 billion in aid to Ukraine. This was part of his visit, as you mentioned, to the country. He also announced that more than $700 million will go in humanitarian aid. Of course, anytime there's conversation about aid to Ukraine, it also turns into a political fight. Here in the U.S., there's a lot of Republicans who no longer want to be sending, these really big ticket aid to the country and think that at this point we've helped enough and that other countries in NATO have to step up. Of course, this is a joint deal with Britain, so that could have some implications into people feeling like they can back this more because the UK is also getting involved. But I do think a lot of President Biden's focus for the next few months of his presidency is going to be to help Ukraine and to end this war in the Middle East. And so this is all kind of aligning with him adding to his legacy. If he wants to be, the leader on the global stage, and he really has been in support for Ukraine.
Alex Gangitano, thank you so much. Another blow to President Trump's legal cases. A New York court tossed out an appeal to the gag order placed on his hush money case. The gag order prevents Trump from making public comments about prosecutors or their families, but it does allow remarks about Judge Juan Merchan and Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. The court said in an order that, quote, no substantial constitutional question is directly involved and would not hear the former president's appeal. Harvey Weinstein has been charged with more sex crimes in New York ahead of his retrial. However, the indictment will remain under wraps until his arraignment on September 18th. Prosecutors announced last week that they showed a grand jury evidence from 3 additional allegations dating as far back as the mid-2000s. But it's not clear whether this new evidence will be part of the retrial or a separate one. Voters are feeling wary of the role of AI in the election. That's according to a new survey from the Associated Press, NORC Center for Public Affairs Research, and USA Facts. It shows 64% of respondents say they are either not confident or not confident at all that information from AI-powered chatbots and search results are accurate. And 43% say they think AI will make it harder to find information about the election. That's today's Daily Debrief. I'm Bianca Facchinei. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel. And come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.